Law in general is probably ready for disruption in a way that not all the industry are. So a lot of companies are working through AI to disrupt legal tech, and it's working very, very well. AI legal tech startup raising 2 million in a seed round from Entourage, Verve Ventures, Banyan, Vento, X Equity, and FNDX. We've seen in the legal tech industry is really making the boring task automated, so the actual professional can get in with as much complete information as possible as they build the case. So there is this space for human creativity.
Looks like they're focusing on the copilot type of approach right now. So basically working alongside the lawyer on specific tasks they want to solve.
Okay, welcome everyone to another episode of the Week in Italian Startup. Nick, how are you?
Ciao, Jack. I'm great. How about you?
Very good, very good.
Nice.
All right, let's jump right in with some of the biggest round from last week, talking about Valo Therapeutics Immunotherapy startup raising 19 million in growth round from Indaco Venture Partners, CDP Venture Capital, Fondazione ENEA Tech, and Freeman Road. So super interesting as we kind of, it involves one of the investors that we pinged as one of the most active that lately has been very active, which is ENEA Tech. So kudos to the team for sure. They're like definitely on a high velocity path in a very, very difficult sector. So definitely a great job. Talking about Valo Therapeutics really quick. They're basically raising capital essentially for extending clinical trials on a kind of technology that I was reading a little bit, and it's very interesting because it merges and combines two very interesting technology for essentially like getting to cancer and tumor specific cells. So essentially, just to oversimplify, essentially what they're doing is they have this technology which which binds with the tumor cell and make essentially your body recognize the tumor cell as a tumor cell, so it can kind of self-heal itself. So it's a very interesting approach. They've been experimenting on this like for a long time, but the combination of the two like therapies, it's something which is innovative. So definitely from someone that is looking into sort of that space from a side and from afar, definitely a very interesting way of thinking. All right.
Yeah. I think it is worth mentioning something more about the round. So the company is originally from Finland, but one of the founders is Italian, and within the round that was raised part in Europe and part in Australia, and that's interesting because the company is also based in Australia, and they are opening an operating company in Southern Italy, and that's probably the reason why CDP, for example, is involved among other reasons. And they want to set up shop in Italy, both for patient treatment and for the production of the chemicals, the substance that they want to use for the treatment. So, interesting international play for
no, I love it. Absolutely. And I mean, imagine how amazing that is actually to kind of dissipate the different operations depending on where you're treated better in terms of operations. So Italy, great for patient treatment and production. Australia, maybe, I don't know, for research or maybe other hubs, other research hub for like a high velocity and high intensity research, so you can get on top of things, and then combining the two. That's absolutely fascinating. So, that's a big signal. And a few Italian companies are actually doing that, and they're doing it really successfully with having like a couple of different operation headquarters, and it works. It works really well. And in the past, investors were a little bit skeptic on this kind of model, but I think we're past that. I don't know what's your feel, Nick, but if maybe 5-6 years ago, you said that you had different operation around, investors got a little bit worried because they would worry about like the kind of the daily operation, communication and everything. But now I think is less of a problem. What's your feel?
Well, my opinion, my impression is that after COVID hit, remote working became a thing. people had to learn to manage team remotely. So before COVID, you're right. It was like, you are remote, you're scattered. Will you be able to manage all the, the people working across the world and across different time zones and so on and so forth? After COVID, I think a lot of managers, a lot of people really experience to manage this type of situation, and that basically somewhat made it a new normal to accept international teams and teams scattered around the world because experience grew about managing this type of teams.
Yeah.
So I would say that still, you think remote harder, but you don't think remote impossible or very hard.
True. That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah.
You don't think remote equal risk if you
Yeah.
if you know you have a team that can handle that.
But maybe the follow-up question is, how efficient you are remotely and why to founders that are particularly scattered around. Maybe that's kind of a nice follow-up that you might ask to actually the risk your outlook on the company.
Yeah, but that becomes a case-by-case analysis and not anymore, an ex-ante, a priori problem. Like, remote.
True.
Let's see how your version of remote is working.
Mm-hmm.
I think
it's definitely vertical dependent as well, of course. Like for
sure.
medical is one thing, for soft development is another thing. So definitely something true. Very interesting, absolutely interesting. But good news for the digital nomads. That's awesome. All right, moving on. Let's talk about legal tech. So it's interesting because probably like law and legal tech has been one of the highest waves. And law in general is probably ready for disruption in a way that not all the industry are. So a lot of companies are working through AI to disrupt legal tech, and it's working very, very well. So one great example that we have, and it's kind of growing quick in Italy, is Lexroom.AI. So let's talk about the latest round. So AI legal tech startup raising 2 million in a seed round from Entourage, Verve Ventures, Banyan, Vento, X Equity, and FNDX. So very, very interesting. For a couple of reasons, I would say. So first of all, just to contextualize what they're doing, essentially, they're building AI that support lawyers on different tasks, so on different levels, and they're focusing a lot on legal research. So research is critical for different kind of legal frameworks, both in Europe, in the US, and across the world. You need to build a legal case. You need to pull together as quickly as possible the most relevant literature on a specific case. So that's a great use case in an industry which is completely unsexy and very difficult to tackle. I would say, I don't know, Nick, what you think about it, but especially in Italy, where the legal system is like full of cases which sometimes are conflictual, and it's not easy to have like a clear-cut definition. I mean, that's interesting. So they're really building on top of that. What is interesting is a couple of things, that they have different modules depending on the kind of law that you want to focus. So you upload your documentation, you ask question, you select the module. If it's a tax case, if it's a corporate law kind of case, is a civil law kind of case, then it kind of adapts to that. That's very interesting. And on the second part is the fact that they really want to make this process as quick as automatic as possible. So one big trend that we've seen in the legal tech industry is really making the boring task automated, so the actual professional can get in with as much complete information as possible as they build the case. So there is this space for human creativity, but built on top on the most reliable and wide collection of information that a lawyer can actually get. So very interesting, definitely very interesting and powerful, I would say.
Yeah. Super interesting. I agree. I think in this case, the product, that AI has basically three use cases now, like the contextual chat-like experience, the copilot experience, and the agent experience. And it looks like they're focusing on the copilot type of approach right now. So basically working alongside the lawyer on specific tasks they want to solve. and that's interesting. And then I agree with you. So the market is big, and freeing up time to lawyers as potentially huge impact.
Yeah.
Potentially also positive on the legal system at large.
No, 100%. And it's kind of like a couple of things. I think there's a big parallel to be drawn with scientific research, because it's kind of the same in the sense that AI using a wide base of information to actually get insight or AI-driven insight that can drive as a copilot the researcher to have the best sort of information base to build like a scientific scenario, hypothesis, or to build like a paper. I think that's extremely powerful. Legal tech is definitely like a more direct approach, but research can actually be extremely massive and disruptive. So there is some similarities there, I feel, and it's definitely coming. I mean, I think there are already a few papers which are completely AI written and reviewed. So that's it will be interesting to see what's going to happen in the research.
Yeah, you read that article, I think. It was
yes,
a recent one about the three papers submitted to, I don't remember which conference, and one of the three had a grade high enough to be actually included in the conference, but then of course they withdrew the paper because it was completely AI based, but it was a novel solution, and that's super interesting.
Yeah. Another point I think that it was interesting is actually when, let's go back to legal and think about negotiation and negotiating contracts. So on one side, you have the lawyer kind of using AI to build a contract. And on the other side, you have the opposing part, lawyers, that kind of are using AI to kind of find ways and pokes hole into the different contract, depending on the needs of their client. So what I can see is that it's going to be probably a legal AI battle between AI lawyers to build the best contract. I don't know if it's good or bad. It's definitely going to be interesting to see how, the future of negotiation is going to look like, because as of today, we're like, I send you the contract, you put in red whatever you don't like, then we have a call, we negotiate the points, I relinquish some things, but then you relinquish some of yours, and then maybe we find a solution, we're both unhappy, but that's how contract works, right? So
I'm very curious about when this will evolve into having different lawyer personalities to your legal AI assistant, and you will select the nasty one, and the other will select the polite one. That would be interesting, right?
Super interesting.
But, there is a research going on, how to creating and defining personalities in the conversational agent. So that would be interesting.
And this brings to another, talking also about legal tech, is that a few people say, okay, lawyers will never be replaced because you have empathy and you need to deal with the customer and everything. But if agents will be able to actually read people and be empathic, like, going way beyond the Turing test, that's also on shaky grounds at some point.
Yeah, well, at this stage, I'm not sure about anything anymore. So
I'm with you.
Everything is on the table and could be removed from the table. So interesting times.
Yeah,
but I agree. Yes.
One last element that, just to give kind of a context of legal tech in general is actually what maybe people don't talk about as much, which is the usage of data to predict actually like whether a case would be successful or not. Because a big part of law is also to, go to your lawyer and be like, okay, do I have a chance or I don't have a chance? So how is that going to change with big data AI telling you, dude, just don't try, leave it, let it go?
Well, that would be interesting. Sometimes you don't sue just because you think you win. You sue because you have other goals. Think of Musk suing OpenAI about the sell to the profit. He didn't want to win. He just wanted to make noise. But that's true, and I believe we could expect something already operating along these lines in the US, for example, where common law is a standard, not Roman law. Where it really depends on the judge that you will get about, your chance of winning a specific argument against another party, because it's a matter of interpretation other than past law. So there are a lot of moving parts in approaching a case. So
and maybe we're back to rhetoric, where rhetoric in the Latin sense, which is the art of speaking and convincing and persuading. So everybody will get the same AI, big information, big database with percentage of failure, but then is really the lawyer kind of persuading judge, persuading jury, and building like a strong case, which actually is convincing. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how it's going to evolve. All right. Talking about the investors of this round, I think it's pretty interesting. For Lexroom, I think they had a very interesting lead investor, which is Entourage. So Entourage is essentially, if not mistaken, a venture studio, which has, on top of that, a 30 million early stage fund, which was launched in 2024. So very interesting, because they have this kind of dual model. And they've been writing tickets on the early stage side, like European style. So very, very, very interesting. And this say a lot on the kind of a potential of Lexroom, actually, that it's not only an Italian thing per se, because there is a ton of complexity in Italy. They will probably focus there, but it's actually something that is easily expandable also in other markets. So that's definitely a great signal. And then talking with another about a second investor, which is Vento, and that's going to segue us to the next news. So Vento, one of the biggest and actually one of the most active early stage investors in Italy since a long time, backed by Verve Ventures. So they announced the launch of a 74 million early stage fund backing Italian founders, no matter where they live. So interesting approach. Kind of trying to boost the ecosystem directly and indirectly, and it's a great addition to what's happening in the early stage venture space.
Yeah, agree. So they've been investing across the world already. So they have a huge presence everywhere across the world. So big network, very, very, very good team. So excellent operations, and this news is super interesting. So they're expanding their investment capabilities. And I believe with this news also they nominated John Elkann president.
Correct. Yes.
Venture. Yeah. So it looks like that there is a rising interest from the Camilleri family, from the early stage into venture capital. So this is an interesting signal for the future as well.
Absolutely. And they're a big attractor. That's also what is interesting about Vento. They are the organizer of Italian Tech Week, which is, as of today, probably the biggest tech event in Italy. I would say the one that at least attracts the most number of people, the most number of operators. So it's in Turin, and yeah, it's a great contribution to the ecosystem. So definitely a good way of building a company. So starting as with the event and accelerator, very synergistic in terms of operations, and then scaling it up to funds, which it's a substantial fund. 75 is for Italy is a very substantial fund, I would say.
Yeah, and for the type of tickets they're gonna make, is a huge volume of initial tickets that we'll see on the market.
Absolutely.
But on the other hand, we have a lot of Italian founders coming across the world doing things. So look at the Money International Edition. We have at least two of these rounds are outside of Italy, and so companies are founded by at least one Italian founder. In the case of Vantis, Angelini is an investor. In the case of Neuromod, now we have Panakes. So 2 out of 4 of these news are Italian founders abroad raising capital. So and I believe there are many that I miss just because they have no direct connection to Italy. So.
No, for sure. And they're definitely going into the direction of being like one of the leading Italy-based VC firm investing internationally. So if you want to invest in companies in the US, you need also like dry powder in a good amount. So you need to be competitive also in terms of volume. So a smaller fund will not cut it for sure. So that's maybe that's also another rationale why such a substantial amount of funding. But it makes perfect sense, I think.
Yeah, there are a lot of moving parts here. So access is the most important part of the game. Access means timing, it means presence, it means connections. So you need to build up a type of structure that allows you to be where you need to be at the right time. So when the round is happening. So that's probably the big let's say moat they built. So this brand, this presence, this speed of action. So those are important aspects.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
When you're starting a company, speed, surety of results are important aspects of accepting investors.
And I believe they have like one of the quickest decision-making process in the venture space in Italy. I think they can give you, if I think I was speaking with some founder, if you actually approach them, they can give you very quickly a yes or a no in few weeks. A few meaning 2. I mean, they're very on top of things. So that's a good. You see that's great because it kind of elevates the standards for also other operators. Because the big risk of a growing ecosystem like Italy is really to be trapped by the traditional pitfalls of a very early ecosystem, which is slowness, confusion, and we all know what's you don't know the founders are there, so these things really speed up the process. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's for sure. So I have to say, when you are Vento within EXO, the point is not the speed to no. It's easy to say no quickly. The problem is the speed to yes, and from yes to funding.
Good point.
Whereas they are in a good position for such a speed. Some operators, some processes and things to set up before being able to wire funds. If you have, I don't know, limited partners, you need to draw down capital. You will have at least 3 weeks before getting the money, blah, blah, blah. So,
good point.
there are some things that are hard to compress. Not impossible, hard. So the speed to yes and wiring is still not top notch, but let me try to build the bridge towards my direction. It's not always a direct fault for the investor, at least in part.
So today was a great session.
We need to learn a better speed to know, that's for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. No, today definitely the great insight of today is that we basically, Nick, you just basically came up with a new metrics for venture firm, which is the speed to wiring. That can be something. So for the listener, guys, we're gonna trademark that and we're gonna build something around it. The speed to wiring, it's really the metrics that you wanna keep an eye on.
I think it's a very important one, of course. It's not something that you control, but it's important.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Awesome. Nick, thank you so much for joining. And this brings us to the end. And I'll see you next week for some other news. Thank you.
Ciao, Jack. Take care. It was a pleasure. Ciao, everybody. See you in a week.